Segal talks at the Segal Center at the Martin E. Segal Theater Center at the Credit Center CUNY in Midtown in Manhattan in New York City. It's a gray and rainy day when no city in the world looks nice. And the big leaden coat of Corona is still on the skies. It's very visible here. We all do feel it. Restaurants open to 20%, but at least in Midtown, every second store is closed, is out of business. And it's still a devastating situation here. As you all know, the Metropolitan Opera, even for an entire year, said they will not do any productions, and musicians, actors are out of work, especially also musicians who normally could work and play in the restaurants. You cannot eat. You cannot play without someone sitting down and eating, and it's not possible really. So it's very dark and gloomy here. And in the White House, we all feel it's like the end of an empire. So maybe in 50 or 100 years, when people will look back about the American century, they say, when did it kind of come to an end? And perhaps Trump infected with Corona, his staff not there, ranting on Twitter, maybe we'll say this was a moment where something changed, but maybe also it will change for the better. Artists, and especially theater artists, have always been on the right side of history, on the complex struggle for freedom, for a better society, imagining new worlds that actually have less suffering, and they are more just. And they have always been close to the moment and anticipated the future. And today with us, we have a great theater, the theater from Ghent, a great director, Milo Rau, and we have dramaturgs and editors, Carmen Hornbostel and Kaatje De Geest. And they came out with a book that asks these questions. Why theater, why now? And also for TAC, as we say it here, the time after Corona, what do? We really have to think about what we are doing now. It is the moment, Ginu Barber said, before you shoot the arrow, when you concentrate, when you think about, there's something in it, and we have to take it very serious. It's a most serious situation for the United States, for the city of New York, for theater in America, in the world. And I think they have something to say that might save us, that might help us to create meaning. And I apologize for speaking so long. A very few sentences about everyone. Kaatje studied art history in Belgium and in Sweden, and she has been part of a great children's theater. I think it's a very important work. Theater for children and young adults is of significance. It's been overlooked, I think. And she has worked in Scandinavia and Germany, and she's the assistant artistic director in Ghent at a very young age here in America. Unthinkable, you know, most of the time we have to wait 20 years to get anything done. And she's the co-editor, of course, of the Golden Book we talk about today. Carmen Hornbostel is German. She's born in Hamburg, and she's the dramaturg, which is a very significant contribution to theater and something that should be taken more serious, especially in America, the concept of dramaturgy, but also new dramaturgy in its enlarged thinking. So she has been in dramaturgy for Milo and the Institute of Political Murder. This is the great organization Milo created for over 50, 60 theatrical productions, film, publication, political actions came out of this institute. And she was the dramaturg for significant production like La Reprise and The Box of Truth, Family, which opened at the beginning of this year as a suicide play, a family that decides to commit suicide. And of course, Everywoman, that was inspired from Everyman in Salzburg. They did in Salzburg, but they took a story of a person who actually is experiencing death, cancer, and they had an opening in Berlin last night. The Schaubühne Berlin opened, the great theater with that play. Milo just went for a day to Cologne, came back, and Milo, of course, people who do know about him, you have his bio. He's one of the great forces of contemporary theater, a thinker, a journalist in a way, an activist, a theater maker, a filmmaker, and also, and I would like to point that out, someone who publishes books. It thinks it's an important part of his work, the Golden Book series. You can go online, check it out. So all of you, welcome. So I apologize for talking so much. The idea of these talks is listening. in a way, actually radical listening. So to really, really hear what you have to say. And it's not an interview in that sense. So Carmen, why did you do the book Why Theater?
I think it's, there are different reasons. So when we came back, we were actually in the Amazon in Brazil. So Milo and myself working there on a project Antigone in the Amazon when the lockdown started and we had to go back to Europe. And we were sitting here not knowing, will we produce anymore? What's gonna happen with the theaters? Will they be closed for a longer time, for a shorter time? So we didn't know anything. So we actually had the time to go back to the roots and ask ourselves, why are we actually doing theater? What do we want to do? And in our little world, sitting at home, being locked down, we said we have to pose this question to more people. And so we started contacting artists and asking them, who would you like to pose this question? Just super basic question, actually. But yes, I think Corona was the time to get back to the roots, to the basic question of why do we produce art and why is it so significant in our society?
And you worked, which is also, I think, a way of kind of doing a new theater. You worked as an ensemble in a way to create it. Kaatje, how is that connected to your work?
So for me, I had just started working for NTGent when this question came. So Milo and Carmen were supposed to be working hard on this Antigone production in Brazil. And then upon coming back, as Carmen said, there was this opportunity to reflect and also this need to reflect. And I was kind of thrown into this as a new addition to the team, but actually I felt it was very generous. The way we first started thinking, how do we want to ask this and who do we want to reach out to? And I feel that we as a team already started to compile a list of ideal names. They didn't have to just be the big names we already knew. I even was able to smuggle in some smaller names also from the children's and young audience theater that Milo maybe didn't know or were not maybe on the radar. But I felt that it was quite generous and that it was like collective. And then we were thinking first maybe 50 people will say yes, or maybe we can convince a bit more. And now we ended up with 106 very diverse. And yeah, like we also ordered them in the book alphabetically. So I feel this kind of represents also the way we came to the list.
Yeah, quite an amazing list. Some names are Tanya Bruguera, Nora Schippermere, it's Sto Dillard, Extinction Rebellion, Susanna Kennedy, Edouard Louis, Rabbi Murray, Toshiki Okada, Alain Pletel, René Polish, Thiago Rodriguez, Kirill Serebrennikov, who we all tried to contact. We couldn't get to him. You guys did, Miet Varlo, and so many others. Our Segal talks we actually have this week also. You're in the week of number 100. You know, there seems to be some parallels. Already have the book out. Milo, tell us a bit about why do you think this is important?
I mean, first of all, I'm always in love with titles. And when this title came in my mind, Why Theater, I was just like intrigued. And it's a question, and then you have to ask this question to people. And it was like Carmen said, it was in a moment when, after some weeks of lockdown, when you felt, okay, this is perhaps the chance, because I had the impression that on the one hand, everybody had time. On the other hand, everybody had time for this fundamental questioning of himself, because normally we give the answer through projects. So we wouldn't like sit down and write this text because we don't have time. And perhaps we are even not interested in doing this as makers, you know. And this was the moment. And then we tried to find out what is the network of people we are interested in. And on the one hand, of course, these are the names you you named, because they are the known names, like the international elite of touring artists like Kirill or like Jérôme Bell and so on and so on. And we tried to connect them to people that are very important in their respective regions, but not known, or in their respective, I don't know, formats they are working with, but not in our, let's say, international touring world. And this was a real research. So we asked curators to give us names and people to tell us. And then we made it broader and broader. We also tried to take some older people from the older generation. So Boto Strauss is in it, for example, Ariane Mushkin is in it, and so on. But also the big names from China that are 80, or from Japan that we wouldn't know. So this was for us really important, to be as diverse as possible. Also taking artists you would not be sure, for example, the Landless movement, Extinction Rebellion, and so on, that are activists. They are doing art, but or theater in a way that you wouldn't, like, I don't know, invite them to the Berlin Theatertreffen, because they are kind of doing it in another way, in a more direct and activist way. So this was the way. And then, of course, when you start to do it, that's what Kaatje said, that you can't stop. So we publish now the book, but since then in Amsterdam we made a little series of new artists, and we made 2 series in Ghent again. So it became a format in itself, like inviting people to give clear and short statements of 6,000 signs. That's 6 minutes, and then you have one question, and that's it. Because this is also the beauty of this book. It's preciseness. It's because, you know, when you, for example, now, I will talk until you say stop, Milo. But we gave very precise limits. What about, they can talk what, and this was mainly Carmen and Kaatje, like being over weeks and months in a kind of a dialogue to model sometimes the texts, because of course we knew about the whole dramaturgy of the book. And if everybody would have started with, now in times of Corona, blah, 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 that we are all in the lockdown, you know. So we tried really to kind of have a story in the book itself. And voila, and that's what came out. So I can show it's really one text after the other. Yeah, sometimes there's written, and then we have statements that we took out. So you could, we have pictures, and we have also quotes, like this one. You can't read it, I guess, because it's turned around. Doesn't theater become itself about also through disappearance? And then you can step to this text. So it's also a playful book somehow.
Yeah, yeah. So what did you detect, all of you, in it? Why is art and theater unique? Why is it necessary? Why is it indispensable? What voices did you hear from those over 100 contributions?
I think they're super, and that's what makes it interesting in this book. They're super diverse in the format. They give their answers. If it's a artistic answer in a poem, for example, or a drawing, or if it's an answer in a political text, a manifesto. So there we can see already a lot of diversity, and of course as well in the content. So we have the political speeches, I would call them, really saying theater can affect our reality, and that is what we need theater for, to have the experimental room for the revolution, actually. Then you have very, very personal answers, authors telling about memories they had, sometimes with their family or in the theater itself. But you have as well, I think, often not even an answer, but even more questions to why theater and how should it be in the future. We have texts, for example, from Jérôme Bell and Katie Mitchell talking about how we have to change theater to make it climate or to have productions that are in the way we have to see our future to change our climate problems. So what can theater do here? So we have a lot of texts that actually pose more questions and ideas how to change and what we have to keep, because theater is a room that can, it's a social space for experimenting and discussing that we are losing more and more in our society, and there is no other space anymore. So I would say there are a lot of different questions that getting posed.
Yeah, and for me, some of the most interesting ones were actually also the ones that were making us, or maybe the general public, also feel a bit uncomfortable, and even not only posing even more questions, but also questioning the question and questioning our posing the question. So that, like saying that the question of why theater isn't as innocent as it might seem, or isn't as like naive as it might seem. So that this was something we also have to watch out for, and not just go into the trap of defending or like in thinking in these ways of profit or use of all things in society. So that was also nice to be confronted with those kind of ideas, and not to be like in an echo chamber, just repeating the same values over and over again.
And what came out for me too is that a lot of makers, not only authors, but also directors or scenographers, are good writers. And they have a very specific way on looking on things. For me, some of the most beautiful texts are the texts when just somebody retells a memory of a show he saw, perhaps as a child, or you know, and just like by describing a show, you completely understand what theater is, how the atmosphere of a show is, how you remember it, what does it mean, co-presence, all this stuff you're talking about it all the time. So this was for me very impressive. And the other side was that I saw that we still have, in a completely globalized world, we have different regions with different topics and different politics of theater. So you would, in the south of or in Latin America, you would have a lot of memory politics. In Africa, you would have a lot of ideas to recreate the national tradition of theater that doesn't exist because there are no institutions. In Europe, you have the decolonization of the institutions, a question of diversity. When you go to Kirill Serebrennikov and the Russians in Eastern Europe, you have the freedom of expression question that is completely absent in Belgium, for example, and so on and so on. So this was for me really important to have this global view and to be taken out of like the 20th time talking about, I don't know, how can we change the canon of a German city theater discussion. So this is like, I'm tired of it. And then you see that this is just one possibility of 50 different possibilities to have this institution as a cultural memory. And this is really, I think this is really the unique point of this book, that we really tried to be, of course we are Eurocentric, and half of the texts are from Europe, because we are from Europe or from England and North America, but the other 50s are from somewhere else. So it's really, we really try to be global in the approach.
Mm-hmm. No, it is truly remarkable. And I don't know of any other publishing project at the moment that really took the temperature, reached out to so many artists, put it into a form, and really captured a moment. That's what also we're trying to do, the archive, the capturing of the moment of a profession also itself, you know, in a time of Corona and what is going through. So for everybody who is really interested about not only what are theater artists you guys feel have something to contribute, which in itself is important, but also really it is a fast comment on the time we do live, is on the time of Corona. You thought about it in March, now it is barely after September, it's already been published. It's a breathtaking speed you guys did that, and that is normally doesn't happen. It takes 3-4 years often for books. That's why journals and magazines are faster. I like the idea. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's also the theme of your season, question everything. what I think Kaatje also talked about, and I think it is a moment to question everything. And I think you said, how can art be an alternative practice to create a solidarity? So the question everything out of this book, is there something the way you say, yeah, that made me think differently? I think we might react to something that came out of it. And was there also for you guys a learning process?
Yeah, well, okay, learning process. For me, it was nice to gather all these different points of view, as Milo just said, because it kind of brought me back to my own ideas of why do I make theater, kind of getting...
Why do you make theater? What's your idea?
I just said it last week in our openings weekend or 2 weeks ago. Why do I make theater? Because I'm actually a psychologist, and I was overwhelmed actually by all the individual dramas that I listened to, and the feeling that I couldn't help, that I couldn't really change the world, and that it's all one big cosmic drama that combines the individual dramas, and it overwhelmed me. So I was looking for a space that gives it a size that I can handle the cosmic drama, and that is theater for me. It's giving the cosmic drama a size that is in proportion to my size as a human being, where I can really start acting instead of being overwhelmed and passive. So that is my reason why I do theater, and why I need this institution. And in the book, it was very nice to come back to all the different ideas what theater actually is. For example, Las Tesis, a feministic collective, for them, theater doesn't mean the space that I'm talking about, a stage in an institution. For them, it's the street. To go on the street and put their rage on the street and talk there, that's their theater. So it's something totally different than in the European approach, usually, where we see theater only accessible, usually for the elite, for the people who can pay for the tickets, who go to the old, beautiful buildings. No, in other parts, theater is just the street is the only possibility to actually talk and be allowed. And they put you mentioned Tania Bruguera, people are really risking their lives, their freedom, for this art to have this possibility to talk out, where people usually can't do it. So this really helped me, or the book, to remind of this huge power that theater can have, as well outside of the traditional room that we always put it into.
Milo, did something change for you, or did something inspire you that came out of the book?
Yeah. I was by some quotes, and some of the quotes already became a bit in, for example, in German media, like quotes that you would know. For example, from René Polesch, he said, "Why do I make theater? Because I need somebody to think. You can't think alone. That's why you are working collectively. You are working in the co-presence of a public," for example. He doesn't even mean the other artists, but the public, that you have something there and attention, and then you would start to talk. Or Neat Company, that was just like one quote I can't forget. It was saying Shakespeare was competing with dog fights, and he was seeing like his best friend was tortured to death. And still he loved the people, and he worked for this public, and he knew these are all sadists somehow, you know? Mm-hmm. And I like beautiful, or another one, I think Chokri Benchika, he wrote, "We shouldn't only describe Hamlet or Don Quixote, we should become them. We should understand the texts we are staging as a kind of being staged in real life," you know? So I had a lot of, this seems a bit poetic, for example, and what Carmen says is absolutely true too, that there is a direct action call in many texts, which is beautiful. But on the other hand, you find out why this kind of very complex and now impossible to act out format of telling reality and creating reality we have, and how effective it is. how extremely effective it is, what we can find out in a show, or working like some weeks together, why we have this kind of theater science, why it exists. And this was this is the outcome of the book. And the last thing for me is really these quotes. It's a bit childish, but we printed them out and we wrote it on the outside of the theater to have really these quotes that tell you immediately the strengths and the power of theater and why you would do it. So it's also a very poetic book with beautiful sentences, you know. It's not only an intellectual or political book, it's really also a book of quotes and sentences and little experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is a little I saw what I could see. It's not yet here on the market. I hope it will be available soon. I hear also it will be an ebook, right? It can be downloaded.
The ebook is on Sunday, I think, no?
Does it out in your theater, or how does one find it? How do you get the ebook? You go to
I wrote down the website of the publisher is the best way to go for now. It's verbrecherverlag.de. Maybe we can write it on the comments.
Which is the great name of it's like the Crooks Publishing House, and the criminals. So so the Verbrecher Verlag, and maybe we'll put it up at the end of this. This is truly it's important. It's your work, or why I also admire it, is kind of a big research machine that is sharing in an assembly form, in a form of people coming together. It's film, it's talks. You do the great School of Resistance talks. You have the Golden Books. You do theater projects. You also have the annual meeting. I think you had it in February.
The dramaturgs meeting, yeah.
All dramaturgs, over 100 artists, dramaturgs and thinkers come together. And it's instigated, put together as the Spielleiter, someone who puts games together. We talked about it yesterday, about the idea of the game, that's theater, so that you put things together and put it you put it out there. So this is, I think, remarkable, and that mosaic that you create of 100 views on reality, actually, of capturing something that is also so important. Do you feel in the formal approach, the how you do it, the way you do it, is that this is more important than the what? How is that something that you feel something is changing formally? Do people say these are forms we should look forward to? We have many young students, listeners, who saying, what form do I choose? What is right? What might work or might not? Are you detecting tendencies from these contributors? People say, actually, I think I will go back to this, or I will do that. Are there inventions or new thoughts that come out?
For me, one of the things that sometimes popped up is that the question of why becomes the question of how. How are we going to do this in the near future, and also mainly facing climate change, and looking at our own position in how we, like, do we need to tour internationally with the same cast from this little country to that country, or could we potentially find new ways of producing? That I think is a big question, like on the content wise, and I think it's interesting that they immediately transformed the why theater question to the how are we going to proceed. Don't know. Apart from that, maybe Carmen and Milo know some.
So new ways of producing will come out.
I think out of necessity as well. So, and this is also something that's what I meant by the texts that made me feel uncomfortable is the ones that are saying we can't go on like how we are doing it now, or who is not in the theater yet, who are we not reaching, those kind of questions that came back, but I guess we are far from the answers. in these fields.
Just to go back also for our audience to understand the ideas of what the work of your theater and Milo Rau is about, I think you opened, if I'm not missing, this fall season with a statue from an artist from Congo, Irene Kanga, and it visualized, I haven't seen, the rape of a Congolese woman by a Belgian states official in the 30s, one of the big colonial crimes that we have, and forced love, it's called. But you also had the minister or the prime minister from the Flemish part of Belgium there, Jean Jambon, if I understand right. So tell us a bit about this, because this is symbolically, in a way, in an imaginary way, but also in a real way. It is a statement of something different and new.
Yeah, I mean, there are even more interesting methods, let's say, in this statue. So the one point is that I think this is the kind of artworks we should exhibit. We should bring the colonial history in these institutions that were built and financed through colonial money, because you know that Belgium was in the Congo and created all these beautiful institutions out of the money they took out of the colony. So this is one thing, like bringing back the crime where it started. And on the other hand, and this is the beautiful way back, that through the money that is made by selling it to us, to the NTGent, so to the Belgian state, to a Belgian state theater, through the money, because these artists are living on a former Unilever plantation, they buy the land back. So by buying the representation of the crime that took the land away, they sell it back. So it's a kind of a like multi-layered activism, and it's a very beautiful and quite in the face artwork. So, and what we do now, we lend it to schools and universities that they bring it in their context, and then would kind of surround it with courses about colonial history, which are not, when you go to high school in Belgium, you wouldn't learn. Perhaps Kaatje knows better. You wouldn't really learn about this time of the European history. So that's another step. And for me, it's all linked to the big question: but why are we doing art? What means realism? Means realism that something looks kind of realistic and I'm kind of touched, or does it mean that reality is transformed and that it's a real act? And what we try, and with this statue, I think we found a very beautiful way of tackling this subject, is to do real acts, to use art, institution, and all the things we can, you called it a machine, to produce this kind of moments of resistance, of engagement, but also of somehow of cruel beauty. Because of course there is now a discussion, and there will always be a discussion, what does it mean when you step into a state theater and you see the rape of a Congolese woman? What does it mean? Can you just reproduce it? How can you kind of contextualize it? And this is another layer of an interesting identity politics discussion you can also open about it, you know? So yeah. I myself, I don't know the answers, and I don't know if Carmen or Kaatje, if they even agree with this action 100% or not, or I mean, we have also our discussions about it.
Mm-hmm. But you are asking questions, and you do really question everything. So tell us a bit about that school of resistance. That part is all part of your work, and I think it is a really important. Florian Malzacher yesterday also talked, a lot about it. But when he talked about the Gesellschaftsspiele, his idea of what theater should be or might be, that it is a forum, the agonism and the plurality in it, and Moufle, who he quotes, and you are now also very, very close to Chantal and Nora. But tell us a little bit. I think it is so important to know for theater companies, also here in the US and everywhere, that in a way it's kind of a free international university, what you are doing. Like Joseph Beuys' idea, you also create discussions, and it's not normal, and I think it should be like this. Is something new, something significant in this book. is part of it. So the School of Resistance, what is it all about?
Yeah, I mean, Kaatje can perhaps talk about moderating Nora and Chantal, so it's not always very convenient too. You called it, and I would like kind of just feature your term. You said you called it radical listening, no?
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do: bring perspectives together. They would never meet and never talk, and perhaps not even listen to the other. Not in a pedagogical way that you should listen to your husband and and the wife should also, and not this kind of pedagogical listening, but listening to learn and to find a kind of a dialectic, intellectual, activist, global point of view. Because, for example, climate activism in England, in India, and in Africa, to bring this together, or in another, like a week ago, we had Extinction Rebellion, so the founder of Extinction Rebellion, together with a kind of a feminist occupying position, which is very, very different. And it was a kind of a fight in between Extinction Rebellion and this more anarchistic conception of occupying space. So that was interesting to see. So it's an antagonism too.
Is it, you have like two people sitting in a theater on a stage, there's a bench or table and people listen to it, or is it online, or how do you organize the discussions?
Yeah.
It's an online, actually it's like a series not very different from this one, also with the support of HowlRound Theatre Commons. So they're doing great work also for the School of Resistance series. And it's moderated often by a different person.
It's mixed in New York, huh? The School of Resistance is mixed together in New York. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we invite different people on different topics, and then the streams are, we try to have one every second week. So everyone can tune in. Also the people who are enjoying the Segal talks are welcome to join. Next one is tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Summertime.
Who's talking tomorrow? Tell us.
Tomorrow it's Milo Rau and Achille Mbembe. And it's part of the Steirische Herbst Festival in Austria.
Yeah, a significant talk about this. We should come to it, but Carmen, tell us about the Nora Chantal discussion. He said it was challenging, or Milo said?
That was Kaatje. Kaatje did the moderation on this one, so I pass on the question to her.
How it was.
Yeah. It was a challenge. I think it was an interesting discussion, and Chantal Mouffe is also like she was talking about agonism and how this is important, that there's room for disagreement, I guess, to move democracy forward. I think this was nice. It was two contributors in our Golden Book, so we just invited them to talk about their contribution. And I don't think it was a problematic talk, but anyone can go and judge. It was lively discussion.
It questions what we think about. And Chantal, also for people who know she's not part of the theater world. Normally people are just the playwrights, but she's a political scientist from Belgium who has some ideas and actually uses the metaphors of theater and the language actually in the terms in a new way. With Achille Mbembe, Milo, tell us a bit about him and why do you talk to him, for example? I'm not sure if he is as well known as he is in Europe. Why do you feel you need to hear from him as part of the School of Resistance?
Yeah, Achille Mbembe is in my opinion, one of the most influential and important philosophers of today. And what we are interested in the School of Resistance, and that's why we invite also Achille Mbembe, we invite non-European, or not, let's say perhaps more simply non-Western perspectives, for example, on global history. You remember perhaps that the German philosopher said, Hegel said, Africa has no history. So Achille Mbembe is the most known historian of the pre-colonial, or theoreticist of the pre-colonial and post-colonial African history. and how the cultural image of Africa was made, and how racism or slavery in the 19th century is linked to neoliberalism of today. And of course, when we are talking about capitalism, we would talk about the workers' movement, I don't know, and the Socialist Party. When he's talking about capitalism, he's talking about slavery in the Congo. So, you know, and this perspective, you wouldn't think about it, because in Europe, for example, Jefferson, he was against slavery, but he had slaves, you know, and this is a very European American way of being schizophrenic. And that's Ashibembe, who can kind of give you a mirror and reflect on that. And it's super interesting. And that's the reason why we invite him, or we try to bring together Nora Chipamire and Chantal Mouffe. So they are very different. So or another moment we had Olivia Nakate and Vandana Shiva. So one climate activist from Uganda, and then the ecologist activist Vandana Shiva from India, and very, very different people, but super interesting to think together with them. So and for me, the main thing of, like, with this book, I understood, I just, or when we were in Amazonia, Carmen and me, I understood I know nothing. I have no ideas. I'm completely locked in a cosmology I was learned in the 80s and 90s in Switzerland, you know? So it's kind of, it's so beautiful to finally move a bit forward, to step some borders. And when I read 10 pages of Ashibembe, that's for me better than, I don't know, 500 pages of I don't know what I read in school of Hegel, if you want. So
yeah, no, it is truly significant that the decolonization has to be thought of in a global scale, that we do not look at it our, you know, just national borders. And talking about Jefferson, you know, I think Tom Cotton, the Republican senator, was caught saying, oh, slavery was a necessary evil for America to become America. It's a shocking statement, and that needs to be fought, and but also be educated. And
but it could be from Ashibembe, because Ashibembe also said the European democracy, or the American democracy, is built on slavery. It's kind of the economy of slavery is the economy of democracy. It's really interesting, and it's still the same today, by the way. And he's explaining it. That's interesting, you know. And I wouldn't have this thought, because when I, as a European thinker, for me, democracy and slavery, that's the opposite. And to think it together, you need an Ashibembe.
Yeah, no, and I think this is also a role the theater can do and can play, you know, to bring the disenfranchised in the center, you know, people who might normally not listen to points of views that we are not thinkable for us. And at the moment, it's theater that doesn't insult, it's theater that does not exclude people. In the contrary, it brings in, like you did with the statue, you know, the world that exists as a reality, but also in ours. Your work in Congo, was your theater work significant that you opened up to these thoughts because you did the play there? Your work now, Antigone in the Amazon, will that be an engagement with Latin America? I was thinking, does it come out of your theater work? Also the book you made, or do you feel this was always an interest in that? You worked also as a journalist. Your philosophical or
I don't know. I mean, for example, Carmen, perhaps you can add a bit, because is it different if we go to the Amazon or if we go to Salzburg or do family? I mean, where is the difference? It's difficult to answer this, because what is it?
I don't know, if for me as well, there is no real difference. The importance is that we do all these different kind of works. That is what is important to me, that you can think the small and the big scale always together, the private and the political. So you can do a play like Family on a very in a very small cosmic world, but at the same time you can start working in the Amazon on a big political play and listening to voices you haven't heard, and at the same time making a play about the Western Europe situation we're in, that seems like there's no exit out of it. So this is the beauty to me, to always have this balance and not getting lost on the one track or the other, but always having, as Milo said, the whole picture.
Yeah, incredible that split in gymnastics term you could make from the Salzburger Festspiele to land activists in the Amazon, with whom you work, and who actually asked you, if I understood right, to rewrite Antigone. They said she should not die, right? And you did,
Yeah.
or I know it's
So,
still,
you know, activists don't suicide, Marxists don't suicide. That's the big difference from Marxists to Greek heroes.
Yeah.
And also perhaps bourgeois culture, where the suicide has a high value. So we have made, for example, a family about bourgeois, let's say, idea of being in the end of times and to suicide. And on the other hand, you have the activism. And I think the balance can describe, there's this very beautiful Gramsci quote, everybody knows and quotes all the time, but I will also do it now, what was it now? The pessimism of the reason needs to be balanced by the optimism of the will. And I think only to make propaganda and scandals and traveling around and making activism, it would for me not be the right thing. So I mean, and it's perhaps in the core of every project, but on the other hand, you also need to confront yourself to melancholy, that you love just playing Bach on stage, you know? So for example, it's the play we did now yesterday in Schaubühne, it's, if you want, very kitschy, because there you see a woman dying, at the same time another actress is playing piano. So that's just something I like, you know? And it's very bourgeois and negative somehow and melancholic. So I would, from a Marxist point of view, I would look at it and say, so, but what for? What for? Why do we look so closely on somebody dying? What does this mean? And I don't know my answer, you know? So, but that's like this, there is a lot of different stuff.
Yes, as they say as well, in the death of one human, you see the death of a whole world. So this is the why for me, to zoom into an individual and at the same point to show the big picture, for example, in the Amazon. So yeah.
And if I understood right, that play that Max Reinhardt actually, I think, commissioned from Hofmannsthal about Everyman, that then was performed to be outside, in a way, site-specific for the public. He was a great genius of theater. You looked at it and you said, it's about death, but let's work. You worked with a woman who is having cancer, who's going to die. And you took that as a question, and how do we represent that play? But you flipped it around and created something that then opened last night that significant European theater. A question, Milo, for you. You did the Gospel, the Orestes and Mosul as a film, and you did now the Antigone in the Amazon, which will come out, and now you also do a book, or you do the School of Resistance discussion. Is this all of the same value to you? Do you focus on theater? Do you say this is, or has absolutely the same importance, or do you say this is a research for me? I need this, as you quoted René, to say, you know, I think through others, and then something comes to you and inspires you. Is this theater work, the theatrical presentation in a site of space? Is that the kind of crowning thing? Or do you think, no, actually, this is on the same level of engagement?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think there are two levels of course, there's the obsession of the moment. Always what you do in the very moment is the most important, and nothing can be as important as the next premiere and the next premiere. And that's why I like theater so much, because I have problems to focus, and theater you have to focus, because there's the premiere and then you have to be finished. So that's but it's true that I also believe in the collective non-conscious intelligence, that you take a lot of time for projects and you are not really working on it. For example, now we are doing a play with Edouard Louis, the French writer, and we are just like talking sometimes meeting. The project all the time shifts from left to right and then goes in that direction, and then we don't continue, we continue again. But I know that somehow with Kaatje and Carmen and the other people working at NTGent during this project, or with Edouard, it will somehow materialize. So I believe in this collective intelligence on the one hand, and on the other hand in the Stalinistic form of the premiere. That at that moment, the red curtain will open and then something has to be there, you know? So this is the beautiful thing. And I think that's also why we link, you said normally you take 3 years for a book like this and perhaps even longer, but we just knew we open the 1st of October, and then this golden book, as thick it is, it has to be there. And then a horrible time for Kaatje and Carmen started, because I was not so much involved, you know, in all these discussions with the writers. But it was clear it has to be finished, and then it was, and that's something I like in this too often used word project, that you are, the way is the aim, and at the same time, I don't know, you can really finish it, you know, it's not too big. So it's every project has the same value. I would say I'm as much proud of this book we made as on the play we made yesterday, and I don't know, the film that about family, I'm not, perhaps a bit less proud, but it's every project has the same value. I don't know, how is it for you, Carmen, Kaatje? Do you have like favorite projects and side dishes?
I mean, this project was for me very, very beautiful, because Milo just said it was a horrible time for us. I mean, Kaatje can afterwards add what she thinks. For me, it was a very beautiful time. Of course, it's a lot of time pressure, but I never had the chance before to talk to so many artists and intellectuals in such a short time, to really have the time to enter into conversations, because usually people, then they have a premiere, as Milo said, and there's a date fixed and here. But no, we really had the time to discuss things. So it was super beautiful for me. And I'm very proud of the book, because I have the feeling it's a compilation of things I would usually learn in 4, 5, 6 years, and suddenly I had the chance to do all this in half a year. So the stress was worth it. And to really feel as well this solidarity, because I love to work in a team, as Milo said already, or René Polish said, I need somebody to think. And usually we're in smaller teams, and now I had a feeling I'm in a big team all over the globe. So there was just a beautiful feeling of solidarity and really being connected in the art world. So for me, it was a lot of fun, and yes, I am very proud of it. There are, of course, little mistakes in it if you only have half a year.
Yeah, but not a lot, huh?
Not many, of course not, no.
Yeah. It's like the carpets where you're not allowed to do something perfect in the face of Allah. You have to make a mistake, because we are humans, and so that's of course a part of it. I think also Kleist wrote about it. You know, he said he had to articulate. He had to articulate, and often talk to his sister, who he said doesn't understand fully what he was thinking about. Unfortunately, I think somewhere he might have even said he talked then to his dog or something. But still, he said the way to articulate in front, as you said, you know, of a group where it matters, and other people said to be forced to put it into a form, and is remarkable. Also, what is remarkable, and I want to give you all my respect. I know we do books, how much work that is, how many hours and careful attention to detail goes into it. But after all this, also we are with the written word, which is also interesting in the time of Zoom, in the time of Netflix, of Instagram, unless you say, well, we put it into a book and we have it written and down, and it's an archive, you know, 50 or 100 years from now, people will be able to see that's what they thought. The time, like eyewitness reports of the French Revolution, we still read it. So really, you have all of our respect. Since we are here in New York and in the US, do you follow what's going on here? What are your thoughts about the state of things? I think this was one of your titles also, der Weltzustand, as Kant said. did it influence in the book the situation of America? Did that come up? What is happening here in the 100 artists and intellectuals you talk to, and what do you all think about what's happening here?
I think I remember the text by Kelly Copper of Nature Theater of Oklahoma, that there was maybe more of a sense of like not knowing what to do, and that made me also think of the many European artists or German, Belgian, Dutch people that do have some sort of support net from the government, that we were in more of a luxury situation, also with healthcare, how those things are dealt with, and then reading the text from the situation. She describes the situation in New York, and it's a little bit like not very optimistic, or not really wanting to answer the question, why theater? So that was quite confronting for me. I don't know the other American voices in the book.
Mm. So did I don't know, the Black Lives Matter, for example, the movement was most probably now, people say it's this largest civil rights movement that the US has experienced in its history. Is it represented in the book? Do people talk about it? Is it a point of reference?
Yeah, I think no. From the landless movement, I think he was mentioning it in a broader sense, because I mean you have the Black Lives Matter movement also in Brazil, and he linked it to the civil rights movement of the 60s until today. I think Alexander Karschner, who read his text yesterday in the German radio, a German maker, very important from Ant Company. You might know him. I think he's also in the book by Florian. And he wrote a lot about it, because it was in the very same moment, I remember, of Black Lives Matter when we started the book, or when we were thinking about it, and he was like taking this as a starting point too. But what we perhaps, now that I'm thinking about, perhaps really missed a bit, we don't have an activist a direct activist from the movement, like we have it from the climate movement, like we have it from many feminist movements and so on, and resistance movements in all parts of the world, but not of this one. And I actually, now that you're talking about, I don't even know why. Perhaps Carmen or Kaatje.
Yeah, I think this is not the only topic that is still missing in the book. These are 106 first statements, but there are a lot of more, or many more artists and voices we should represent and have to, and that is why we try to keep this project alive, building up a website called whytheatre.eu, which is still in the building process, to really have all these voices added up to a big archive, because this book would have more than 5,000 pages if we would really say we have to put all the voices in there. So it is a starting point. It is a first step, and this archive has to be built up step by step. And this is what Kaatje and me are especially working on, to really have more voices. And this is a good point, to really have somebody directly from the Black Lives Matters movement, and to keep on asking why theater to all these different parties.
It's impossible, of course, to represent everything, and this is a remarkable Olympian feat, what you stemmed as a weight, like you're a heavyweight lifters there, and it is truly sensational, I think, that you got this all together. And also what it shows, and part of the Segal talk, some excerpts were published by MIT Press with Bonnie Maranka and Performing Arts Journal, Lettres International, just in the current issue. I also have excerpts in it, and the editors from Lettres said, you know, what is interesting to them, that normally that's such statements, and the same in your book, you have from politicians, right? People who are concerned about life, of society, you know, but they are the artists actually now taking over a void, you know, that especially in America, you know, seems to be missing, you know, that all the concerns, you know, about the present, the future, reconnecting, about engaging communities is something that seems to be fallen on the lap of theater artists, and they take up the challenge. And I think that is courageous and important and so generous of people who are also, to be honest, we are on the margins in a way of society, of importance, especially theater is no longer, as in that sense in the center, especially in America, film, television is so much more out there. But I think the contribution you all made with that, and also with the appeal to say, put your body into life, go out there, do something, participate, create discussions, take risks, and really, as you said, question everything. And if we don't do it now, whenever in our lives? And it's really a significant time we live in now, and this has consequences. So I will also read what the artist said, and as I said earlier, we are trying to create a theater festival for the summer of 2022, where we would like to invite, of course, you guys, maybe to create something, a big dramaturgy session or a theater project. If you have any funding for anything, or we find something, you bring that energy, that idea, and also that thinking with you, that model what you represent as in its whole Gesamtkunstwerk of total art, in a way one could say, this kind of imaginary cathedral that you guys are building and adding on, is a way to react to the time we live in, and it's I think brilliant, and it's shining in the sense of a diamond that more light comes out than you put in. I know you all put a lot of work in, and it's hard to do it, but still more comes out, more energy from that, symbolic representation of art on stage, on film, in a book. And that is significant, and for everybody who sees the light. So really all my respect, I think, from everybody here in New York in the theater scene who follows what you guys are doing, have been doing for so long. We're coming closer to the end. What's up? What's baking in the oven? In the Institute for Political Murder. What's going on?
Yeah, I can announce a beautiful project. Thanks first for your generous words. That was really touching to us, I think. To be called the imaginary cathedral, it's beautiful. But we can announce the next Congo Tribunal, which is next weekend. Will happen in Zurich if COVID-19 wants and accepts it, that we can stage it. So we invited the jury, perhaps the Congo Tribunal, you know it. So we did it first.
Yeah, we showed it to a film festival also, yeah.
Yeah, true. And we did it first 2015.
Say a little bit about it. People might not know all what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there is the Eastern Congo, you might know it, there is a huge civil war provoked by the raw materials that is there. You have 70% of the cobalt, of the coltan reserves of the planet. And you have, for example, one Swiss company, Glencore, the biggest raw material company, which is from Switzerland. Like, I think the 5 biggest companies in raw materials anyway are all from Switzerland. And they have the 2 biggest coltan mines, and they have 70% of all the coltan that is on this planet. So actually that's incredible. So this is in the hand of one enterprise. And as you can imagine, it didn't come like in a very normal way in the hands of this company. So we said, okay, we do our next Congo Tribunal, which is a kind of a people's tribunal, but with real judges, real advocates from Congo and from the International Tribunal of The Hague, mixed together to represent a transnational economical tribunal. Because we have a global capitalism, but we haven't global law. And so we said we create this institution. We did it in 2015. We made the 3 first cases, and now it became somehow through crowdfunding and stuff, it became somehow a bit independent from us. It became not yet an institution, but it's close to get an institution. It has the support from the mining ministry, for example, from the Eastern Congo. And now we bring it back to Zurich to put Glencore, the Swiss biggest enterprise in raw materials, next weekend in trial at location.
The headquarters are in Zurich.
The headquarters, yeah, close to Zurich in Zug. It's a little small town close to Zurich. Yeah.
What's going to happen to Antigone in the Amazon?
When is it? We restart in November, beginning
In
of
November.
Oh, this year? Yeah.
Yeah.
The rehearsals start.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't go there. They come to us. Some of the activists come to, or actually two only, come to Ghent, and we unite there and we develop the script together, and we hope to go back in March 21. So yeah, let's hope.
Incredible. And as you know, everything is closed here. You know, they're not even rehearsals. You know, there are museums just open on a very, very low capacity. And so it's just so stunning to hear from us, you know, that things.
Yeah. We are close to it too. Today at 8 is the decision of the government, of the Belgian government.
I just read that at least the bars and restaurants will be closed from Monday onwards in Belgium too. So we will have to listen to the updates.
Paris yesterday was decided from 9 o'clock in the evening is a curfew, bars closed, restaurants closed. You will have to go home. It's like war, a civil war time, and
well, in Berlin they just decided to open the bars again.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes, from today on, the so-called Sperrstunde is gone again, so it's changing every day.
We had the premiere yesterday, the opening of the Schaubühne, without bar, without drinks. It was finished at 11. It was really horrible. And today, one day later, they reopened.
Yeah. Okay. It's an incredible time. Marvin Carlson, who was on here, said, in the history of theater, it has never been like this. There, of course, were the plague also in Shakespeare's time, but he said they would go outside London and perform. There's always some theater was happening somewhere, but this kind of global lockdown really for a while, nobody showing it. It has never happened. Mosques are closed for the first time in 1,500 years. It is an incredible, significant time what we are going through. We are too close to understand it, but it really has a big chance to reinvent if the questions and question everything is done right, and that something will come out and that's different. And we all have to be part of it. And I think your work really shows that we can do that, something individuals, companies, ensembles, can do something. We hope to do that a little bit then with this festival, which we have never done. But there's no big festival in New York City in the sense of a European festival that an entire city celebrates it, and it's also hopefully in the summer. So we'll look, and we also need advice how to do it best. Jay Wegman, who from the Scribble, who will be on next week.
We will be there and
collaborate and many.
We come. Let's explore. We take the invitation.
Yes,
we come 22. We will only not in August because we do the All Greeks Festival in Ghent.
Okay, so let's do it in July. So that's good. Really, that means a lot to us, and it's a great model. If theater is of any interest, it is because it's a model. Andrzej Wirth said it. It's a model for something, right? And for that moment, it's real. It happens on the stage. It could happen in life. That's why some people hate it. They don't care about films. They don't get censored. That's why theater gets censored. Abhishek Mumbar from India said that. You know, my plays are censored by the government. Meanwhile, other stuff with films, no one cares. And so ask the government if theater is important. It is. And so you are a model for something different, something new, something also with a promise. And as you said, with the triumph perhaps of the will over experience, or triumph of hope over experience. So thank you all for joining. I know but I cannot believe it. In the between openings and the Schaubühne, and I know you're just one day in Cologne with your family and you're going back, and you have the talk. So it's a big compliment, but also it shows your concern for the world to participate and to share. So thank you all, really.
Thanks to you.
Thank you for inviting
having us.
I hope to see you.
Yes.
Bye bye, Carmen.
Bye.